Okay, so there's a new report that has just broke, and it's saying that suicide rates are at an all-time high, meaning it's never been this high. And this is extremely reflective on just how rotten our country has become. So let's watch this.
This is some really terrible and some sad news. It's data that was actually just released recently by the CDC with demographic breakdown as well. And unfortunately, just really kind of continues a trend that we saw after COVID. So let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. We have the full chart here. Overall, the number of deaths by suicide here in the United States actually increased 2.6% from 2021 to 2022. They have an overall demographic breakdown here. And some of the trends are some things that we've been trying to highlight on the show now for quite some time. As you can see, the number of male suicides stood at some 39,255 in the year 2022 in the United States. Female suicide also increased, actually even more so at a higher rate, from 9,800 to 10,194. When you look at the overall breakdown by race, you can see that Native and African, American Indian and Alaskan Natives, there was a slight decrease in the overall rate. The thing is, though, is that the numbers there are different. They're so low in some respect that whenever you do see changes, that it will reflect differently in terms of the overall statistics. I think the important thing was to actually look at the age demographic and at some of the really troubling trends that we're beginning to see. So luckily, I guess, the 10 to 24 year suicide rate went down by 8.4%. There is still some analysis about happening with young girls, young men, social media, and all that. That's a whole other discourse that we can step away from. The problem that you're really seeing here is that
So they are finally acknowledging that social media has a direct impact on mental health. I don't use social media at all. I don't use Snapchat. I don't use Instagram. I don't use Facebook. All these websites exploits your primal instincts, exploits your senses, and feeds it into an algorithm, training the app to know what you want. And every time you go, especially TikTok is literally just one giant distraction algorithm. It's trained to show you only videos that will tap into your dopamine receptors. That's all TikTok is. Stay on the app long enough, and eventually you'll spend more and more and more time watching videos, and less and less and less and less time doing the things deep down in your heart you actually want to do. So you're just stuck on the app. You're being more and more invested into the app, seeing what's going on in the app, seeing your friends on the app having a good time. That will make you depressed. Because as you're spending more time on this app, you're having less and less fun, while also at the same time watching other people have more and more fun on the app. So it's a feedback loop that just ends up with you being extremely depressed, extremely sad, and TikTok will only show you videos of attractive people having a good time. It will show you the best, most entertaining videos you will ever see, and you're gonna start to think that your life is boring, and you'll just feel guilty, bad. You'll feel like a loser. So if you have any common sense, get off of these apps.
from 45 to 64 years, there was a 6.6% increase in the suicide rate. But over 65, there was a 8.1% increase in the suicide rate, Crystal.
So 8.1%. Do you know how utterly insane that is to have an 8.1% increase within a year? We can't do this. Who are these people? We need to start asking them their story. What makes them feel that the world is so bad that it's no longer worth living? Okay, the act of suicide is one of the most unfortunate things a person can do. To end your own life goes against every human instinct imaginable, but yet they feel as if the world is so bad, so cruel, that it's just pointless, and then they end it. That is what suicide is. And it'll just keep getting worse, keep getting worse, keep getting worse. At least they're reporting on it now. They used to not even report on it, but now they're actually coming out of the woodwork and actually reporting the fact that an 8.1 increase of suicides is happening. It could be your brother, it could be your sister, it could be your mother, it could be your dad, it could be your cousins, it could be your best friend. Who knows? It could be anybody. So this really affects the whole population. And we wonder why our birth rates are so low. It's mostly because people turn to drugs, people turn to suicide, people turn to murder, rape, all these other evil stuff that just disconnects you from being a good human being. We have lost the incentive to be a good human being. People can do everything right in their life, go to school, get a job, be a good worker, and they'll still lose in the end. So, what do people do? They turn to evil. They start to become evil. Why would I waste my time being a good person when I could be evil? I could steal, I could rob, I could kill, I could do all this stuff that is unethical, but because the society rewards evil and punishes those that are actually trying to do good, I'm going. It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. Capitalism literally endorses this sort of behavior. Are you going to spend all your life working for a low wage, can't even afford to buy a house? Or are you just going to freaking smash and grab and just steal a whole bunch of cell phones, do all this stuff, and not have to do any work? In some cities, they let out criminals if the amount they steal is under $1,000. So if you steal $999, they'll just let you out. They won't even arrest you. Why they do that? Who knows? Who knows?
That is particularly troubling, and underscores a lot of issues around. Look, we talk a lot about boomers here on the show, about boomer wealth, about how, in many respects, the luckiest generation that set us all up for failure. But we also don't forget, and I was just looking at some retirement data just yesterday. Over 50% of people don't have a single dollar in retirement saved.
So 50% of people don't have a single dollar. A single dollar. Do you know how insane that is? A single dollar in retirement saved. And Social Security, it's a freaking Ponzi scheme. Oh, invest your money into Social Security, and then when you're old, that same money will be worth less due to inflation. And people are trying to save money, but the cost of basic goods are just rising every single year. So people are playing catch up regardless of how frugal they are living. No matter what you do, if you're not getting a constant increase in wages, a monthly increase in wages, you will be behind. You will be behind. You have to invest every dollar. You have to buy your something of value as soon as you get your paycheck. Otherwise, the next week your money will be worth less. If you sit your money in a savings account if you wait like let's say a year, that money will be worth 10% less. Yes, less. So you are being punished for saving. So people are like, why would I save money? Why don't I just buy a bunch of stuff? And if I ever go bankrupt, I'll probably just sell it off. So a lot of people are doing that. Or they invested in crypto, and once that crashes, they're broke. They're broke. So why do we even participate in this clear scam scheme scummy system?
A lot of old people are in a real bad situation. They are a blown tire away from bankruptcy, and they literally only have a social security check to rely on. And in many respects, that is not enough in order to make rent, make food. There's a loneliness crisis as well that has hit. There's also a big generational question around people who are elderly and whether their relatives should care for them or they're going to just dump them in a home. And unfortunately, like,
So that's another problem. This is why we need strong family units, not just for the child's sake, but also for the parents' sake. When you have a two-party household, you're able to save money for retirement, you're able to pool resources. When you just have one person trying to raise a family of like three, you clearly will be like penny pinching because you won't have enough money for yourself. You won't have enough money to take care of yourself during retirement. And your kids, they have to live their own life and they're barely getting by. So how the heck are they supposed to take care of you? Are they just supposed to take care of you your entire life and be your retirement plan? Is that fair to them? Is that fair to the child to have a parent basically live off their kids for like 30 years until they die? No, obviously not. Again, 50 years ago, this was not an issue. This was not even a discussion. If you worked hard enough, you could afford retirement. If you worked hard enough, you could afford a house. If you worked hard enough, you could afford a car. All this stuff is no longer a reality. No longer a reality. The politicians, the news companies, they aren't living in reality. They say, oh, the economy, like literally Biden said, oh, the economy's looking good. Oh, everything's on the up and up. Meanwhile, you go outside and there's homeless people everywhere. There's people nodding off of drugs. There's people like 40 years old still living in their parents' basement. There's people who are what was I gonna say? Shit. Who are working for low wages that don't even cover the cost of living. They don't have dentistry, they don't have dental, they don't have health care, they don't have reliable transportation, they don't have anything really except maybe a roof over their head. If they're lucky, there's a lot of people working full time and homeless. They literally work all the time and then sleep in their car, then go back to work in an effort to save money. And they still can't afford an apartment because everything is so freaking high.
like
So sad.
if you look at the discourse and all that, I think a lot of that is reflected in that over 65 number. And one of the reasons why you should always care about the suicide rate, especially whenever it goes up, is Andrew Yang said this during his campaign. I still think it was one of the most profound things he ever said. The most basic reflection of a society doing well or not is, are people living or are people dying? And we have a lot of deaths right now. We have massive deaths of despair. Suicide rate is just part of that. Drug overdose and all that also went up in 2022 to basically an entire Vietnam War of people killed. One of the number one causes.
So an entire Vietnam War worth of people have died due to drug overdoses. Insane. So the war isn't in Ukraine, it's here. I repeat, the war isn't in Ukraine. It's right here at home. Good versus evil. This is what we should be focusing on. Instead of punishing people by inflating our currency and handing it out to random countries with zero allegiance to us, do these same countries ever give us money when we're in need? There's homeless cities. Where's our check? Where's our support? Where's our financial aid? coming from other countries? Why are we the only people that need to give money out to random foreign countries? Why are these countries not returning the favor when Americans are struggling, when Americans are going through a drug crisis? Where are they? They don't care about us. They care about our military, our free military security in countries like Japan, where we just have military bases everywhere. They're like, oh man, the Americans are here to protect us for free. For free, at the expense of somebody who's poor, who might need to go to the doctor. They can afford to pay for their treatment because our government is spending 50 cents for every dollar on military, being the world police, being the world's military conglomerate, trying to quote unquote keep the peace. Meanwhile, other countries aren't even spending a quarter. I think we spend like more than the next 10 countries combined on military. Is that really what we should be spending our money on? We need to we need to close all of those bases, bring our military here, fortify the United States. That's how it was before, until we turned into the global police force.
Causes of death. Accidental cause of death now is no longer car accidents for younger people. It's actually drug overdose, specifically by fentanyl. So these are all deeply interconnected around what we see, and it is a deepening sign of overall sickness. Increases in the suicide rate now over the last several years are something that we are really beginning to see is an overall trend. And if you do need help,
Now, instead of fixing the problems, they'd much rather just have us kill ourselves with drugs, with suicide. That is their wet dream, to just kill off the lower class, just have them die in droves, faster than they are being born. That's literally their dream. They want that to happen. That is the only explanation. They want this to happen.
please seek it from a friend, call the suicide hotline, or any of that, because it's just it is a sign of deep sickness that we can see here.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to lay out some of the additional numbers of who is most impacted. Both men and women saw an increase in the suicide rate year over year, but men continue to make up four
Yeah.
times the rate of women in terms of suicide. So men are 50% of the population, but nearly 80% of suicides. And to dig even more into the age numbers, the highest rate of suicide comes among those age 85 plus.
So, people who are 85 are killing themselves. Your grandparents are more likely than anybody to end their own life. And that's mostly due to loneliness, maybe not having anybody to talk to, or not seeing their grandkids or children. That, and on top of that, they probably don't have sustainable retirement, meaning they probably get social security and not much more than that. So they see prices are increasing and they're getting the same amount of money and they can't afford basic stuff. They're getting weaker and weaker, so they're not able to work. So these people just end up saying, why would I suffer a slow, painful, torturous death? And they just kill themselves. At the end of the day, that's what they do. It's not rocket science to see why this demographic is ending their life more than anybody else.
So, Sagar, speaking to what you were
Mhm.
saying about, people who are towards the end of their life, who are worried about being put in homes, who don't have quality of life, whatever is going on there is deeply tragic. That our elders, to that large extent, feel that they are no longer wanted, needed, et cetera, in this world. The third highest rate is actually among those aged 25 to 34. So
Mhm.
people are kind of, coming into their prime earning years, who are, these are millennials and Gen Z who may be struggling with, not being able to find purpose in life, not being able to get the kind of job
So 25 to 34 is when you're supposed to find your purpose. By this age, 25, late 20s, you should be who you are going to be for the rest of your life by this moment. You should be stabilized. You should know who you are as a human being. But now we are the first generation that really has no real purpose. People might go to work, but they're not really interested in their job. Um, People don't make enough to even remotely raise a family at this age. Imagine being 30 years old and still not being able to afford your own house, still living with your parents. That would cause massive distress, especially when you're in an abusive situation and you're forced to live with abusive parents or maybe narcissistic parents. That would cause huge problems, okay? And there's more and more men and women that are living like this because you can't afford it. Um, this has to be fixed. It has to be fixed immediately. If it does not get fixed, we will literally cease to be a country. You can't have a country where there's more people killing themselves than are being born. There's more people dying of drug overdoses than are being born. Do you know how insane that is? And no politician is willing to talk about this stuff. Not Joe Biden, not Trump, not George Bush, not Obama. They won't talk about this because it just shows how weak as a society we have become.
That's going to give them any kind of stability. All those sorts of things play into this. One thing that I found remarkable is actually in 2020, there was a significant dip in the suicide rate. And then post pandemic is when it has really spiked. And listen, there's a lot of ways we could speculate about why that may be the case. But we were looking at, we're probably going to cover for this weekend, numbers of homelessness. That also dramatically declined during the pandemic because of some of the government supports that were put in place. So I wonder if some of those government financial supports that were in place during the pandemic didn't also help to curb the suicide rate, because we
Right.
know,
That's possible.
we know when people are under severe economic stress is one of the times men in particular are more likely to commit suicide.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing I really found.
If you're like months behind on bills, you have no savings, you're getting older, you're probably middle age or whatever, have no friends, have no real relationships, you are working a job that you hate, that makes suicide very tempting. For most people, we need to really do a critical analysis of why men are ending their life more than women and why we're ending our lives at a faster rate than previous generations. We need to do that immediately. What can be fixed? And they've already said that keeping people sustained, their basic needs sustained, has cut down on the suicide rate drastically. And people are still saying, "Oh, capitalism is the answer, bro. We we just need capitalism. We just need." No. You know, if this was 50 years ago, I'd agree with you. But now we're entering late stage capitalism where everything is controlled by conglomerate corporations. There's no more family owned businesses anymore. There's Walmarts, there's BlackRocks, all these massive companies, the Amazons, massive companies where you are literally just a number. You are just a number. You go to work as a number, clock out, then you just go home, repeat the process. You can't say no. You can't reason with your boss. Um, there's a massive corporate bureaucracy, and at the end of the day, people are just tired of it. How isn't this a new form of government? This corporatism is like another form of government, except there is no democracy. You don't decide who gets to run for president. The corporations do. It's called lobbying. All these corporations have to do is donate billions to politicians, and then those politicians will act in the interest of those corporations. They don't act in the interest of the people, presidents included. They can get lobbied too. Um, and they just sell out. It's all about selling out. It's not about actually being popular. And then we have the electoral college, which just means other people vote for you, basically. So it's not really your vote. Nobody even knows who the people in the electoral college are. And the voting machines, there's no transparency within the voting machines. We don't even know if our vote is getting counted. So can this system really be fixed? I don't think so. The people have become docile, low testosterone, split family units. We're too busy squabbling and arguing with ourselves, with each other, and that has allowed the government to just be tyrants and just overreach against the population. They can raise taxes whenever they want, no pushback. They can start a meaningless war whenever they want. They can give billions to foreign countries whenever they want, no pushback. Giving hundreds, like I think it's like $500 billion they've given to Ukraine, more than they've ever given to any sort of people in need. They don't do it. They'll give it to other countries though when it suits their interests. When it suits their interest, they'll start a $1 trillion war when it suits their interest. That's all this is about. We are not living in a fair society. We are not living in an equal society. We are living in a tyrannical corporate dictatorship with no civil rights, no accountability. And the only thing we have left, we don't even have each other because the communities are messed up. It's going to take years to fix. It's going to take more than a Trump, more than a Biden to fix. We need radical change, radical ideologies. We need to start thinking, okay, we've been living in the same system for 250 years. Maybe it's time to think of something else. Maybe we need something else. Maybe we need something different. Maybe things need to change. What worked, what didn't work? That's what we should be thinking, because the current system, the current monopoly run system has failed most people. Unless you, I think like three people, the top three people own 50% of the country's wealth. Three people. They have more power than any sort of king, any sort of emperor during ancient Rome. They have way more power. During ancient Rome, the emperors were like freaking broke. They had to like beg for money and pay off debts and stuff. These people don't have to do any of that. They basically own 50% of the wealth. And once they start being conspiratorial with their money and making alliances with their fellow rich people, then they have even more power, even more wealth. They can coordinate on what goes on, give to certain politicians and not give to others because they suit their interest. So we are living in the worst time to be alive in human history. I'm sorry to say, I'm not trying to be negative, but it's true. We are living in the worst time to be alive in human history. Our ancestors had purpose. Our ancestors had stability. Our ancestors had strong family units, strong community. Now we have none of that. We have no purpose. We have no family. We have no community. All we have is social media, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and this will not be filling the gap. None of this will fill in the gap. It will only distract you while the world around you starts crumbling slowly but surely, and that will leave enough time for the elites to just replace you with AI, because eventually you'll get replaced with AI. I mean, They don't need us. They don't need workers anymore. They're already putting billions into things like ChatGPT and Boston Dynamics robots. Amazon is using robots now. Why would they need humans? They don't. They don't. They've used you. You've suited your purpose. Now it's time for your replacement.